Hollywood just threw the party of the year, and the aftermath is looking like a total nightmare for Meghan Markle. Everyone was there. The cameras were flashing, the champagne was flowing, and then, hours after the last guest left, something extraordinary happened. The photos disappeared, scrubbed from Getty Images, gone from the official record, vanished as if the evening never happened. And the order to delete them came from a single source: Netflix. Why is the man holding her $100 million future erasing her from the official narrative? What did those photos show that was so damaging that it could not be left on the internet? We are about to find out. Let's go back to the beginning of that evening. Because before the photos disappeared, before the whispers started, before the internet began pulling at every thread it could find, there was a party. And that party tells its own story. The event was a Netflix gathering in Montecito, intimate by Hollywood standards, carefully curated, the kind of evening where the guest list itself is the message. You do not end up in a room like that by accident. Every name on that list was a deliberate choice by people who think very carefully about who belongs in their orbit and who does not. The dress code was black and white, strict, non-negotiable in the way that only truly exclusive events can be non-negotiable, and every major name in that room respected it, without exception. Every name except one. Meghan Markle arrived in chartreuse, a bright, unmissable $700 yellow-green gown that stood out in that black and white room the way a foghorn stands out in a library, and the reaction, according to people present, was immediate. Not warm, not impressed. The kind of reaction that travels around a room in whispers before the subject has crossed it. Now, there are two ways to read that choice. The generous reading is that it was a miscommunication. A wardrobe decision was made without full information about how strictly the code would be enforced. An honest mistake by someone who simply got it wrong. The less generous reading, and the one that spread fastest through the room that night, is that it was intentional. That arriving in a color no one else was wearing in a room full of people dressed identically was no accident. It was a statement, a calculated move to be the most visible person in the space. The problem is that the most visible person in the space was already chosen. Her name was Carey Mulligan. The evening was effectively in her honor, and showing up in a gown that commanded attention in a room meant to celebrate someone else is not a power move. It is a miscalculation, and it set the tone for everything that followed. Because then came the moment that body language experts would spend the following days dissecting frame by frame Meghan and Nicole Avant. Nicole Avant is not a peripheral figure in this world. She is a serious, well-connected, genuinely respected figure in both Hollywood and political circles. Her late mother, Jacqueline Avant, her husband is Ted Sarandos, the co-chief executive of Netflix, the man whose signature is effectively on the Sussex deal. In other words, Nicole Avant is not someone you are casually friendly with. She is someone whose warmth towards you signals something specific about your standing with the most powerful couple in streaming. And Meghan, according to multiple accounts and the photographic evidence that circulated before the deletion, was working that connection very hard, visibly, in a way that read, to the people in the room and the analysts who examined the footage afterward, as effortful rather than natural, eager rather than confident.
And I think we can see that Meghan feels it. Meghan feels the pressure. Meghan feels the failure. And Meghan feels so many things. And her solution is to grin as hard as humanly possible.
The word one body language commentator used was manic.
And I think it indicates something very clear. Meghan tends to get a bit more manic when things aren't going particularly well. You can almost feel
that is a brutal word, but it stuck because the images supported it. The proximity, the sustained physical contact, the expression of someone performing closeness rather than simply feeling it. And then there is Ted Sarandos himself, standing nearby, photographed in moments that analysts described as visibly uncomfortable. Not hostile, not openly cold. Just displaying the body language of someone who is present but not engaged, who is in the conversation without being in it. That distinction matters enormously at this level. In Hollywood, genuine warmth from someone like Sarandos is currency. It opens doors. It signals to everyone watching that you are valued, that you belong, that the relationship is real, productive, and mutually beneficial. The absence of that warmth signals the opposite, equally clearly, equally publicly. And then came the detail that reframed the entire evening.
I have a very weird interest in clinging to people. Like, it looks like they're holding each other's hands hard. It's very, very weird. Obviously, the dress is like puke green. She's got a belly.
Sources close to the situation began suggesting in the hours and days following the party that the Sussexes were not originally on the guest list at all. That attendance was not simply arranged in advance through the normal channels, that there was a degree of insistence involved, that the couple effectively made clear they wanted to be there, and the Netflix team found themselves in the uncomfortable position of accommodating a request they could not easily refuse. If that account is accurate, it changes everything about how that evening reads, because an invited guest who makes a bold fashion choice and works the room enthusiastically is simply having a night out. But a guest who pushed their way onto the list, then violated the dress code and visibly clung to the host's wife while the host looked on uncomfortably, is something else entirely. It is the picture of a relationship that has shifted so significantly that one side is no longer in a position to simply show up. They have to negotiate just to be in the room. And once you are negotiating for access to a room that used to welcome you automatically, the dynamic has already changed in ways that cannot be quietly undone. Something happened between the signing of that original deal and this evening. Something significant. Something that apparently nobody at Netflix wanted captured permanently on camera, which is exactly why the cameras were dealt with. Sometime in the hours after that Netflix party, a decision was made. Not by a junior publicist trying to manage a difficult morning. Not by an overzealous assistant cleaning up an inbox. A decision was made at a level with the authority to call Getty Images directly and instruct one of the world's most powerful photo agencies to pull published images from its archive. That is not a small thing. That is not standard procedure. That is not how the entertainment industry handles unflattering photos of people it values. That is how it handles a problem. Getty Images is the gold standard of event photography. When images are published through Getty, they are on the record, permanently. Journalists license them. Publications use them. They become part of the documented history of an event. Getting them removed after publication is not impossible, but it is rare. And the circumstances under which it happens tell you a great deal about the nature of what is being protected. In this case, Netflix made the call, directly, requesting the removal of images featuring Meghan and Harry from the official coverage of their own event. Let that sit for a moment. This is not the Sussex legal team filing a privacy complaint. This is not Meghan's representatives pushing back on unflattering tabloid coverage. This is Netflix, the company that pays the Sussexes, the company whose name is attached to their content. The company that, by any reasonable measure, should be invested in making the Duchess of Sussex look as good as possible in every publicly available image. Instead, they called Getty and asked for the photos to come down.
Harry and Meghan are not doing well in Hollywood. The future is, in fact, is looking quite bleak for them in the entertainment industry.
Industry insiders quoted in coverage of the deletion described the move as highly unusual. One source used the phrase unheard of. Another described it as the kind of decision that only gets made when the optics are so damaging that the risk of leaving them up outweighs the awkwardness of removal. So what exactly did those photos show? Some of the images that circulated before the deletion captured the moment in full with the chartreuse dress. The contrast with the black and white room around her was stark and unmissable. In the context of a curated event where the dress code was non-negotiable, the images read as more damaging in still photography than they apparently did in the room. A moving person in a bold color can be explained away. A still image tells a fixed story. And the story those stills were telling was not the one Netflix wanted associated with their evening. But the dress was apparently not the only problem. The images of Meghan with Nicole Avant, examined frame by professionals, showed dynamics that were difficult to read generously. The physical proximity, the sustained contact, the expression on Meghan's face read as working rather than relaxed. And in several frames, caught at angles that a more controlled photographic environment would never have permitted, Ted Sarandos is in the background. Not engaged, not warm, not performing the kind of easy, relaxed body language of a man enjoying an evening with people he genuinely values. Present, tolerating, waiting for the moment to pass. According to sources familiar with the deletion decision, those images were the real problem, not the dress. The dress is embarrassing. Sarandos' body language is something else entirely, because it does not just reflect badly on Meghan, it reflects badly on Netflix. It shows in permanently documented form that the relationship between the streaming giant and its most high-profile and expensive talent acquisition is not what the official narrative has always suggested. It shows the seams. And then there is the detail about Sarandos and social media that emerged around the same time. Reports surfaced suggesting that Sarandos had quietly unfollowed Meghan's brand accounts. Now, in isolation, an unfollow is a minor thing, People unfollow accounts for any number of reasons. It means nothing on its own, but it does not exist in isolation. It exists alongside the photo deletion, alongside the body language, alongside reports that the Sussexes were not on the original guest list, alongside the commercial underperformance, alongside the quiet renegotiation of the original deal terms, alongside the reported ending of Netflix's backing for the As Ever lifestyle brand.
Cheese tasting, wine tasting, and olive oil tasting. I am so excited. And we will end the trip with making our own Italian dish.
Each individual piece can be explained away. Together they form a picture that is very difficult to explain away. And the Sussex team's response to all of this has been telling in its own right. No formal statement addressing the photo deletion directly. No named spokesperson putting a specific explanation on the record. No pushback on the guest list claims. No clarification on the Sarandos unfollow. Just silence. Managed, deliberate, carefully maintained silence, which is itself a kind of answer. Because when something is genuinely innocent, you explain it. When a photo is pulled for routine rights reasons, your publicist says so in 30 seconds, and the story dies. When an unfollow is meaningless, you laugh it off publicly and move on. You only go silent when the explanation would be more damaging than the question. And right now, the Sussex camp is very, very silent.
So it weirdly feels like throughout all of this, Harry and Meghan are really truly on the outside looking in to the Hollywood bubble.
The photos are gone, but the story those photos were telling is not gone with them. It is still out there, reconstructed from the images that circulated before the deletion, documented by the people who screenshotted before the takedown, and amplified by the very act of removal that was supposed to make it disappear. Netflix tried to erase an evening. Instead, they made it impossible to forget, behind closed doors. Let's go back to the beginning. To understand what is happening right now, you need to understand what was promised, and how far reality has drifted from that promise. It is 2021. The Sussex departure from royal life is still fresh. The Oprah interview has just detonated across global media, and Netflix, sensing a cultural moment of extraordinary commercial potential, moves fast. The deal that gets signed is reported at the time to be worth in the region of $100 million, possibly more. The details are never fully confirmed publicly, but the number that circulates is staggering by any measure. The pitch from the Sussex side is compelling. Harry and Meghan are the most talked about couple on the planet. They have a story the world wants to hear. They have access to conversations, figures, and perspectives that no other content creators can replicate. They are not just talent. They are a franchise. Netflix buys that pitch completely. And for a moment, the excitement on both sides feels genuine. Then the content starts arriving. The documentary series, the Netflix special, the projects that were supposed to announce the Sussexes as serious, substantive voices in the global content landscape, and the reception, measured against the scale of the investment and the height of the expectations, is underwhelming in a way that quietly reverberates through Netflix's internal conversations.
As we all know, it did not go very well. Like, basically, for the entire series, people were just making fun of the episodes and being like, Meghan, what are you doing? But while it was coming out and everybody was talking about it, Netflix, for like the entire first 2 weeks, I would say that...
Not a disaster, not unwatchable, but not what a $100 million bet looks like when it pays off. The numbers do not lie. And inside Netflix, where everything is measured, analyzed, and compared against projections, the Sussex numbers are a problem.
The best shows on Netflix for 2025 thus far, with love from Meghan, I'm gonna make sure I get this right, ranked at number 383.
But here is what most coverage of the commercial underperformance misses entirely. The content was only part of the deal. The other part, the part that never gets discussed because it was never announced publicly, was the broader brand relationship. The idea that the Sussexes would function not just as content producers, but as a kind of cultural gravitational force for Netflix. That their presence on the platform would attract talent, generate conversation, and position Netflix as the home of serious, values-driven storytelling for a global, progressive audience.
He did a documentary called Polo on Netflix, and guys, his documentary that I didn't even know happened ranked at 3,436.
That part of the pitch has not been delivered either. And within Netflix, according to sources familiar with internal conversations, the frustration over this is significant, because you can forgive content that underperforms. Content is unpredictable. Even the best creative teams produce things that do not connect. That is the nature of the business. What is harder to forgive is the feeling that you were sold a vision that the people selling it either could not deliver or never genuinely intended to. The renegotiation of the Sussex deal, which sources describe as having happened quietly and without public announcement, apparently reflects this frustration directly. The terms that exist today are reportedly a significant step down from what was originally agreed. The level of financial commitment, the number of projects greenlit, the degree of creative latitude is extended, all of it scaled back in ways that tell a very specific story about how Netflix now views the relationship. And then there is the As Ever situation. Meghan's lifestyle brand, which launched with considerable fanfare and genuine media interest, reportedly received a degree of Netflix backing, positioning it as part of the broader Sussex content ecosystem. The brand and the platform were supposed to be mutually reinforcing. Content that drove viewers to the brand that gave the content a commercial reality beyond streaming numbers. Reports have since emerged suggesting that Netflix's backing for As Ever has either ended or been significantly reduced. The brand continues, but the infrastructure that was supposed to power its growth at scale has apparently been quietly withdrawn. That is not a minor adjustment. That is a fundamental change in what the relationship actually is.
Really well for her. We know it isn't. They dropped her. They dropped her business. Ted Sarandos unfollowed As Ever.
Now layer all of that commercial context over the evening we have been discussing. A couple whose deal has been quietly renegotiated downward showed up at a Netflix event they were reportedly not originally invited to, insisting on attendance, arriving in a way that immediately draws uncomfortable attention, working the room in a manner that reads as desperate rather than confident. And all of it captured in photographs that the host company subsequently decides it cannot afford to leave on the public record. That is not the behavior of talent at the peak of its relationship with the studio. That is the behavior of talent that senses the ground shifting and is trying, with increasing urgency and decreasing effectiveness, to remind the people who matter that they are still relevant, still valuable, still worth the room. And Harry, in all of this, is a figure who deserves a moment of genuine attention, because he did not come to America to attend awkward Netflix parties and watch his photos get deleted from the internet. He came for a life that was supposed to be freer and more purposeful than the one he left behind. He traded his family, his country, his military career, and his royal identity for a future that was supposed to be built on authenticity and meaning. What he has instead is a $100 million relationship that has quietly contracted. A brand that is losing its platform backing, and an evening that his business partner tried to erase from the official record. That gap between what was promised and what is, between the pitch and the reality, between the life Harry thought he was building and the one he is actually living. That is the thing that neither a Netflix renegotiation nor a Getty deletion can fix, because you cannot scrub that from the record. A Hollywood exile in real time. There is a moment in every falling out that nobody announces. No press release, no official statement, no dramatic confrontation in a boardroom or a public falling out captured on camera. Just a quiet, invisible line that gets crossed. And once it is crossed, both sides know, even if neither of them says it out loud. Even if the meetings continue and the emails keep getting returned, the public relationship maintains its polished surface. Something has ended, and everyone in the room can feel it. That line, based on everything that has emerged from that Netflix evening and everything that preceded it, appears to have been crossed. Not recently, not dramatically, but steadily, over months. In the accumulated weight of underperforming content, renegotiated terms, deleted photographs, and quiet unfollows. The Sussex era at Netflix is not over in the sense that a formal announcement has been made. It is over in the sense that matters more. The belief has gone. The excitement has gone. The internal advocacy that every talent needs from the people who sign their checks has gone quiet in ways that cannot be mistaken for anything other than what they are. And Hollywood, which reads these signals faster and more accurately than any outside observer, has already adjusted accordingly. Watch the celebrity landscape around the Sussexes right now, not the hostile voices. The hostile voices are easy to track and easy to dismiss. Watch the silence of the people who were once actively, visibly, enthusiastically in their corner. The A-list names who posted support during the Oprah moment. The industry figures who signaled alignment when the Netflix deal was announced. The cultural voices that positioned themselves alongside the Sussex brand when it felt like the right side of history to be on. Where are they now? Not attacking, just absent. And in Hollywood, that specific absence communicates everything. It means the calculation has been made. The association no longer carries value. The protection that proximity to the Sussex brand once offered has evaporated, and nobody in this industry maintains a relationship that costs more than it returns. That is not cruelty. That is just how it works. The projects still reportedly in development inside the Sussex pipeline face a landscape that looks fundamentally different from the one in which they were conceived. A cooking show, a lifestyle content series. Projects that were designed for an audience that viewed Meghan as an aspirational figure, a woman of taste and substance and quiet authority, someone whose recommendations and perspectives carried genuine cultural weight. That positioning is damaged, possibly beyond repair in its current form, because the aspirational brand depends entirely on the audience believing in the person behind it. It depends on warmth, on genuine affection, on the feeling that the person selling you a lifestyle actually inhabits one worth emulating. And it is very difficult to maintain that feeling when the most powerful man in your industry is scrubbing your photos from the internet and looking uncomfortable in your presence at his own party. The audience is not stupid. They see the same images everyone else sees. They read the same stories. They absorb the same atmosphere. And the atmosphere around the Sussex brand right now is one of managed decline rather than building momentum, of defensive maneuvers rather than confident expansion, of a household working very hard to hold together something that is quietly coming apart. And then there is the question of what comes next, commercially, personally, for both of them. For Meghan, the path forward requires something she has not yet demonstrated a consistent ability to do, rebuilding from a position of diminished standing without the institutional support that made the original rise possible. The royal connection gave her global reach before she had done anything to earn it commercially. The Netflix deal gave her a platform before she had demonstrated the content to justify it. The American political adjacency gave her relevance in rooms she had not organically entered. Every major advantage she has had in the post-royal chapter has come from borrowed infrastructure. That infrastructure is no longer being lent as freely as it was. And for Harry, the personal reckoning is darker and more private. He is not a content producer by nature or by training. He is not someone who is ever going to build a streaming empire, launch a lifestyle brand, or navigate Hollywood politics with the fluency the situation demands. He came to this chapter because the woman he loves told him there was a better life waiting on the other side of the palace gates. He believed her, completely. He burned every bridge that might have led back. He said things publicly that cannot be unsaid. He wrote things in a memoir that cannot be unwritten. He made himself, in the eyes of his family and his country, into something between a cautionary tale and a stranger. And the life he was promised in exchange for all of that is now an evening where the photos get deleted, a deal that has been quietly reduced, a room where the host looks uncomfortable, and the guest list had to be negotiated. When the most powerful man in streaming stops making space for you, naturally. When the photos from your evenings together get pulled from the public record. When the excitement surrounding your arrival in this world has been replaced by the particular Hollywood silence of those who have already moved on. You are not in the room anymore. Not really. And no amount of chartreuse makes you visible to people who have already decided not to see you. The photos are gone. But the story they told is not. Netflix threw a party. Meghan showed up, and by morning, the evidence was being scrubbed from the internet by the very people who are supposed to be building her future. That is not a rough night. That is a verdict. When the most powerful man in streaming starts deleting you from the record, the message is not subtle. The A-list favor has run out. The $100 million era is closing quietly, and the cameras that once chased this couple everywhere have started looking somewhere else.